Hi there, my name is Chris Myers. I'm one of the guys that runs the Sports Medicine Ultrasound Group, or SMUG, here in the UK. We've been on lockdown for just over a month now. I've had two or three different manufacturers send me some ultrasound machines, so I thought it would be useful just to review some of those machines. I've obviously had quite a lot of time to play around with them and find out a little bit about each machine. So I wrote a blog on our website about the Clarius version 2, which you can see in the picture and you can see here. So we'll just be going through some of the features and some of the positives and the negatives of the machine. You can find the blog on our website, which is ultrasoundtraining.co.uk, and if you've got any questions about this, then feel free to drop me an email. So what do we mean by a handheld machine? So at the moment, there's three options of machines, as you know. There's the handheld machines, or sometimes called the pocket machines, and this is where the sort of term of ultrasound being the new stethoscope has come from. And then in the middle, this is what I use normally, which is a Logic E R7 machine, which is what we would call a portable machine. So we've got the sort of pocket or handheld machines. We've got the portable machine, which obviously can be put on a trolley. And then we've also got the larger cart-based or more traditional machines. And they've all got their advantages and disadvantages. But obviously what we're reviewing today are the handheld machines. Now, handheld machines have probably been around for about, well, definitely 6 to 7 years, I would say. And GE brought their V-Scan out, which was one of the first handheld machines, which is a really cool machine, but certainly not appropriate for musculoskeletal at the time. And then since then, there's been lots of different handheld machines that have come out. And I've personally found them quite disappointing. Now, don't get me wrong, they look pretty cool. The whole idea of a handheld machine that's wireless is something that can be really beneficial for many clinicians. But at the end of the day, and we're purely talking about musculoskeletal imaging here, if you don't have a very good image, then it's going to make what is quite a tricky skill already even harder to get good at. And it's so important that we get the right diagnosis with our patients. So if the image quality on these machines are not good enough, it doesn't matter how cool it looks, you've got to make sure that you've got image quality, and that really is the most important thing. The first few generations of these handheld and pocket machines that I've seen, I've found quite disappointing from an image quality point of view, and probably as a result of that, I've been quite negative about them. I certainly don't have one in my clinic at the moment, and as it stands, I didn't have any intention of buying one. There's lots of machines out there at the moment. They're all under £5,000, which is good. So this is one that lots of you have probably heard of, which is the Butterfly, which is a really impressive bit of technology. It doesn't have any piezoelectric crystals in there, unlike obviously all of the others. And this is getting a lot of press at the moment. It's been very well invested in, but at the moment for musculoskeletal, the image quality just is not good enough. I certainly don't recommend that people buy this for musculoskeletal ultrasound. In the middle, we've got the Clarius version 2, which obviously takes over from the version 1, which is what we're going to talk about today. We've also got the Alpinion, which I haven't tried yet, but is one of the ultrasound machines that I'm going to be trying in the next week or so. And then down here, we've got the Philips Lumify. Now, the Philips Lumify is probably considered, it is probably one of the most, it is actually the most expensive, I think, on the presentation slide here, but it is probably considered to have the best image quality. And certainly what I was interested in, now I've only had minimal experience of the Philips Lumify, but it is another product that I'm looking to get in the next week or so, because I think the version 2 Clarius and the Philips Lumify will be a really interesting head-to-head. Then we've got the Sonon, which I haven't tried much of either. I don't particularly like the sensation or the feeling of scanning with such a large probe, but it is a wireless product. And then this is the GE that I mentioned, which isn't designed for musculoskeletal, but did get the ball rolling with handheld machines. Now you can see that the Butterfly, the Alpinion, and the Philips Lumify they all have a wire. So it's a little bit unfair to compare them all, because I do think the wireless versions do give us another element, and certainly in terms of how they work, whether they're wireless or not, has a huge influence on where the battery is stored, for example, and where the software is stored. So certainly we need to consider that when we're looking at the different machines. So the Clarius version 1, so I tried this about probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I must say I wasn't overly impressed, and it didn't do anything to make me think that I want a handheld machine. So I tried this. It's a lot bigger than the version 2. It's clunkier, it's heavier, and it did have a problem with overheating quite quickly. Whereas the Clarius version 2 is very different. It must be at least 30–40% smaller. It is, and I've had that confirmed, that it is about 30 to 40% lighter as well. So it is a lot more comfortable to scan with. I was sent the L15. So from a musculoskeletal point of view, there's actually 3 probes. There is a convex probe. I think it's called the C3. I haven't tried that, but it is very low frequency. So certainly, obviously, as a musculoskeletal practitioner or somebody that works in sports injuries, you're really going to be looking towards the L7, which is the lower frequency probe, or the L15. As I said, I've tried the L15. This is obviously a lower frequency, so it is designed for greater depths. But as you can see, 4 to 13 and 4 to 15 is not a huge difference. So, and I have spoken to the manufacturers, and there probably isn't a huge difference. If you're going to do a lot of scanning more than 4 centimeters, so around that 4 to 7 centimeter mark, then you might want to consider going for the L7. But for most of us, where we're looking between that 0 to 4 centimeters, probably 80% of the time, then we would go for the L15, which is the 4 to 15 megahertz. Now, generally speaking, when I've been scanning with them, you can get about 40 minutes of battery life out of them. So obviously that doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not a lot, to be honest, but you do need to remember that it is a wireless machine, which means that the battery, as you can see the picture in the slide, is basically just that, okay? And it just clips in to the machine there. So you get about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. I have also heard, and I've read on the websites, that maybe 60 minutes, but certainly for me it's been about 45 minutes. So if I were to use this in my clinic, I do believe I would have to buy a spare battery. And you can buy the batteries, and they're around £100 to buy. So you need to consider that when you're purchasing it. Because if I was in clinic, now as a physiotherapist, I don't do musculoskeletal lists, ultrasound lists. I may have a patient that has a shoulder problem, and then I'll do a scan, and then the next person may be a back problem, so I won't do a scan. So if I was to use it in clinic, I'd have to make sure I turn it off in between every patient. Otherwise, you're literally going to have to change the battery every patient if you forget, which I have done since I've been practicing using it. But I do think you need a spare battery, and it just comes with its own charger, like this. So obviously you just have that plugged in your clinic, and you'd just be running the 2 batteries if you're doing, a reasonable amount of scanning. Obviously, I mean, it does come with just 1 battery, so you may be able to do with that. But certainly if I was to get one, I think I'd go for the second battery, which is around £100, I think. The other thing that you had a problem with the version 1 was that they got very hot. They actually sort of overheated, not overheated, but they did get hot. Not for the patients, you don't need to worry about that, but just when you're holding it, you can feel it heat up. Now, because the battery is in the probe, it is still a bit of a problem. And after about, again, maybe 30-40 minutes of using it, it may start to get a little bit warm. Now, they have provided when you buy it, a little fan, which you basically clip on. It's not a very big fan, so it does give you a solution, and then it will just start to cool it down. It's not ideal having to put on a fan onto a bit of equipment, but it is a solution. I'm sure it's something they'll be looking to try and change in the future. So that's the little fan that you can get. But yeah, this is what I've been using. Now, I read the website, the Clarius website. It says it's just like a normal ultrasound probe. It's not like a normal ultrasound probe. It is a lot heavier. It's a lot bigger. And it is something that you have to get used to. So, for example, scanning a shoulder, I found that no problem whatsoever. When it came to scanning something a little bit smaller, like the hand, but I certainly scanned around the ankle quite a bit, I did find it a little bit more challenging, and it is something that you need to get used to. Okay, so let's go on to sort of connectivity and exactly how it works. So it is compatible with Android and Apple. There is rumours that you're going to be able to maybe start if you've got a Microsoft computer and a Microsoft platform, you may be able to start putting it directly onto your computer, which I think would be really cool. I use a MacBook. It would be great if I could just zoom it straight onto my MacBook. I generally have Apple things, so this is my phone, so I've tried scanning with the phone, but mainly I've been scanning with a reasonably sized Apple iPad, which has been good. I must say it's really quick at connecting. The connectivity seems very good, because that was one of my concerns, that it would be a little bit poor from that point of view, but actually it's been very good. I don't love scanning on a phone. I don't really think that for musculoskeletal we should be scanning on phones. I don't think it looks great in front of the patient. On the iPad, certainly that is something that I've been using, and I would suggest that the biggest iPad screen would be good, because I think the bigger the better when it comes to that sort of getting a nice image that you can really read. Overall, obviously, it has been pretty easy to use. As I say, it is quick to connect. It takes probably less than 10 seconds to go from turning it on, connecting, and then actually seeing an image, which is great. Everything's quite intuitive. I've not had to look at any instructions or anything like that. It generally makes sense how you go through the process of getting set up and scanning. That's been quite good, actually, I must say. In terms of how it works, so one thing that I wasn't sure about was how the images get from here to here. I thought maybe you needed to use your home Wi-Fi or your clinic Wi-Fi, but you don't need that at all. Basically, there's something called Wi-Fi Direct, which is inside this, and that just sends the images securely over to the iPad, and that's worked really well. So no need for Wi-Fi. Now, the other thing I was a bit concerned about, because one of my things I don't love is touch screens on ultrasound, because if you've got gel on your hands, it can get a bit tricky. It can reduce how good the image is as well. But yeah, it just all gets a bit messy. What's good about this is you don't actually have to touch the screen much at all, because these buttons that you can see on the side here, you can just go into the back end and you can make that a freeze button, a save button. You can sort of change that button into whatever you like, or you can start a video from it and stop a video from it. So that's a really good function. So you don't actually have to touch the screen much whatsoever. You can see on the screen itself, this is the freeze button. You can save an image. You've got the video button there, but that can all go onto there, so you don't need to touch it. One thing I was touching it for, now I don't know if you can do that on the buttons, you probably can, but you just, to increase or reduce the depth, you just run your hand up and down the screen, and actually that seemed to work quite well. But again, if you've got gel on your hands, then it could be a little bit tricky. Now, as you'll see, there's no focal zone on this image. And the reason being is it's very similar to a sonocyte machine. So sonocyte machines don't have focal zones, but you just put whatever you want to have a look at in the middle of the screen. So the focal zone is in the middle of the screen. And obviously that's really important because you want to make sure that you get the best spatial resolution you can on the part of the anatomy that you're trying to make a decision on. So, for example, as most of you will know here, this is the humeral head. This is the greater tuberosity. This is supraspinatus in longitudinal section. This is the acromion. This is the deltoid, subcutaneous fat and skin. This is the subacromial subdeltoid bursa with the bursal planes on the top and at the bottom. So this is a longitudinal section of supraspinatus. And obviously, because it's in the middle, that's where the focal zone is. So that's where we're going to get the best spatial resolution. If we wanted to have a closer look at the deltoid, or we wanted to look deeper down, then obviously you just change the depth to ensure that what you're looking at is in the middle. In terms of the presets, there are lots of presets for MSK, shoulder, nerve, exactly what you would expect. And they all seem to work reasonably well. One thing you can't do is you can't alter the frequency manually. So basically, if you change the depth, it goes to a lower frequency, obviously for your deeper structures. And if you go to more superficial depths, then obviously the frequency will go right up to that sort of 15 in the case of the L15, or 13 in the case of the L7. And that means that you're going to be able to get a better resolution higher up, but you can't manually change the frequency. So for me, for somebody that's scanned quite a lot, I do like having the option of being able to change the frequency just to sort of make that image a little bit more the way I want it. But that's as an experienced sonographer, as somebody that's starting out, which I would say these are quite designed for, then it is a bit more like that point and shoot camera where it does quite a lot for you, which at the beginning is really good. And even as an experienced sonographer, it wasn't something that got in the way, but quite a few of us would like to change some of the settings ourselves. But overall, it's very easy to use. The connectivity is really good. You can use Android or Apple, and as I say, it's quite intuitive. So it does seem to, it seems quite a natural process in terms of going through from starting up to saving images, saving patient names, etc., etc. Now, I have actually tried the Clarius version 2 before. So on one of our Introduction to Musculoskeletal Ultrasound courses about 3 months ago, we use GE Logix on our courses, which is probably considered to be the best sort of portable machine out there, or certainly one of them. But as you can see, we ended up on the course with quite a few different machines. And really, certainly anybody that's looking to buy a machine, you must try that machine. You must have experience of that machine before you buy it. And certainly if you look on the websites of Clarius, of Butterfly, their images look great. That's basically like a dating site. So you're always going to put your good images up. But unfortunately in real life, it's not always the case. So you can see here we had the Clarius. We also had the Clarius version 1, which I wasn't a massive fan of. We've got the Sonocyte M Turbo, and we also had the Butterfly there as well. So we had lots of opportunity to compare these different machines. Now, because I use the Logic GE a lot, I really wanted to compare it to that. And look, there's no doubt this is probably a £17,500 machine, 17,500 to £20,000. The Clarius is under 5,000. I think it's just under 5,000. So it is 3 times cheaper, or 3.5 times cheaper. And therefore you would expect the image quality to be worse. And it was worse. It's not as good as the Logic GE. But I must say, for under a £5,000 machine, I was pretty impressed with it. And because I tried some other handheld machines before, this was probably the first time I tried a handheld machine and thought, do you know what? I would probably be happy scanning with that. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't swap it for my GE, but I was impressed with the quality. Now, I haven't used the Philips Lumify. That's the one that I'm going to get hold of next, because I want to compare the Lumify to the Clarius version 2 because I think those two are probably the best on the market at the moment. I've mentioned this already. The butterfly for me is just not good enough for muscular. I know it's only £2,000, although you do have to pay your subscription on top of that, so it's about another 500, but it's just not good enough. Here's the Clarius version 2. This is the median nerve here compared with here. You can see there's just not so many shades of greys. It essentially looks fuzzy, and I wouldn't want to diagnose anything on the butterfly. The Clarius certainly looks better, and we're going to come on to that, and I'm going to do some live scanning on the Clarius as well, so you can have a look at it on this blog. Now, if we just go on, I've just selected a few images. Now, as I said, it's really important when you buy a machine that you test a machine yourself. Don't trust the images on the website. They're always going to look great. Okay, so if we look here, we've got the transverse section of the median nerve, and what I was looking for here is, can we see the internal structure of what is a pretty small nerve? And the answer is yes, you can. Now that shows that that has pretty good spatial resolution. And again, in long section, you can also see the internal structure of the nerve. This is a supraspinatus of the this is supraspinatus tendon in long section. This is your extensor carpus brevis and longus, so it's your common extensor tendon. And again, you can see the internal structure nicely. And this is the patellar tendon in long and cross section. If we go on now, if we look at slightly deeper areas now, so this is the gluteus medius in transverse section, and I had pretty low expectations for this scanner on this, but overall, don't get me wrong, that's not as good as a more expensive machine, but I was quite impressed with the machine. Now you can see as you go a bit deeper, you do start to lose, this is in long section of the posterior superior band of glute, you do start to lose that internal structure. But for a machine of under £5,000, a handheld machine, I was pretty impressed with it. But you can certainly see as you get a bit deeper, you are going to lose that image quality, which you would expect at this price bracket. If we go to here, this is the proximal hamstring, so you can see the triangle here that many of us will talk about. And again, not bad, but you do see that you lose a little bit of image quality. This is the gastrocnemius soleus aponeurosis. Actually, not a bad image there. Obviously, that's not as deep as some of the other structures. So overall, and I scanned all these different areas myself, these are the images that I produced. I must say, at superficial levels, I was very impressed with it. As you went a bit deeper, it was probably better than I thought, but overall, I wouldn't want to be making too much of a diagnosis on those slightly deeper structures. So that is a limitation of the machine. Okay, what we're going to look at now is I've set up a screen share. So this is what you would see. This is set up off the iPad. So you can see, if we go to the top, this is where all your presets are. So MSK for etc. etc. It tells you what machine you're onto. So obviously you could have more than one machine onto an iPad. And then on the left-hand side, all I need to do is just scroll up and down, and you'd see it changes the depth. Okay, so it's quite straightforward. So if we just do some scanning, just so you can see. So you can see, as where we were before, you've got the median nerve there in the middle. You can see it's got lots of nice shades of grey. The resolution is pretty good. And overall, I'd say the image quality is quite impressive, really, for the cost and also the size of the machine. So that's the median nerve there. Let's have a look at something else. Let's have a look at, if we find the Lister's tubercle, which sits on top of the wrist there. So now you can see Lister's tubercle, and obviously you can see the different tendons and you can see them moving. If we have a look at one of the tendons in long section, that gives you an idea that you can see that internal structure of the tendon there. With the tendon, you've got the retinaculum on top, and then obviously you can see the bones. You can see it's a pretty, I know this is very superficial, but it's a nice image. If we go up to the elbow, which is one of the ones we looked at, this was one of the views we saw. So again, looking at the common extensor tendon, you can see a very nice view, and you can see that internal structure. We go on to, let's have a look at the patella tendon. So again, you can see, and if I just press one of the buttons, then we can obviously freeze the image. So if I just press that there, and then I can also scroll back and forward until I want to save an image. And if I want to save an image, I just press that, and that's the image saved. You can also measure things. So you can measure from one point to another, which is really useful, but obviously you would expect that. And obviously, and you can also record cine loops and videos, obviously. So you can see that there is a nice internal structure of the patella tendon, and I must say it is quite a nice image to look at. As I mentioned earlier, the deeper structures aren't necessarily quite as clear. But in terms of the functionality in those superficial structures, I think it's really quite impressive. Okay, the next section we're going to look at is what's called the Clarius cloud. So basically, as soon as you carry out a scan, if you save an image, if you save a video, as long as you put it underneath a patient, so you've recorded the patient's details, that goes automatically into the Clarius cloud, and you get unlimited storage on your cloud. So that's really good, and that's better than a lot of the other handhelds. Sometimes you do have to pay for that. For example, I believe the Butterfly, you have to pay for that. So basically, you just log in to your Clarius cloud. If we go, you can see here the hours I've been using it. If we go to the 9 exams, and I think this is one of the things I really like about the Clarius, is how easy it is to upload and move your scans and send scans to referrers, write reports. Unfortunately, with a lot of even the portable ones, and certainly with the cart-based ones, you have to put your USB in, you have to export it if you don't have a PACS system. So you can see here I've done quite a few scans. So if we just choose one with quite a few images on it and videos, you can see here, this is the videos I was doing when I was showing you when I was practicing the ultrasound guided injection techniques. If we go to this one, this is some of the images I was making for the section previously. If we go to the previous exam, see if we can find any others. Yeah, so this is a shoulder that I was doing. So again, it gives you an eye. This is actually my left shoulder. You can see there's a little bit of bursal thickening there. And then once you've got that on there, you can see you've got all the different images and videos at the end. So you can do any of these things here. So you can share it really easily, just sending it as a file. You can edit the images, so you can actually write on the images before you send them. You can obviously export the images. That's really straightforward. If we look over here, you can have a discussion. You can actually have your own reports on there, which you can then obviously send off. And you can do measurements and calculations once you've already done the scan, which can be quite useful. So you can see this is a really useful, very straightforward, easy to use interface, which I think is a really good positive for these handheld machines, particularly this Clarius. And I know this is an area they've spent quite a lot of time improving. And certainly as somebody that teaches, somebody that has lots of referrals coming in, and I have to send out my reports, etc. This has everything under one place. It's easy to edit and it's easy to send. Certainly for when I'm putting presentations together, it's really easy just to have my whole collection of scans ready to go, which is a big advantage for this interface, really. Okay, so I've come downstairs because I've got better Wi-Fi. Sorry if there's a slight echo. You'll see why in a minute, because I've got 2 devices linked up. So basically, this is something that I've been doing with some of the students that I teach. So you can see that I can actually, as I move the probe, you can see the orientation of the probe moving as well. So I'm scanning off the iPad. The iPad has called the phone. So this could be somebody, for example, like I had last week in Singapore. And then whatever I scan will see on the phone. So if I scan, you can see the patella tendon, which is coming up on my computer here, and then you can see that coming up on my phone. And then as I move, you can see the probe moving as well. So it's a really nice tool for teaching people. So you've got your patella tendon, you've got your tibial tuberosity, got a small amount of fluid in your infrapatellar bursa, just in here. So yeah, so it's a nice interactive way of teaching people. Obviously, you could have it up on a big screen and teach a course as you're doing it. You wouldn't get the echo. It's just that both of the receivers are next to each other. So this is called Clarius Live, and I think certainly it's got some potential for some remote teaching. And I think that's one thing that I like about the Clarius itself, is that it has got a lot of interaction, a lot of connectivity. And certainly there's quite a lot you can do from a teaching point of view on it. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to look at, I did have a little practice. You can see here I was cooking some duck breast, so I used duck breast and I had some needles. So I just practiced guiding a few needles with it. It does have needle visualization, but it is an extra cost. I think it's around £800 for needle visualization. As I said in the blog, as an experienced clinician that carries out ultrasound guided injections, I generally wouldn't use needle visualization, even for the deeper injections. So I don't personally think needle visualization is essential, unless you're really new to things and you want as much help as possible. So this was a 25 gauge orange needle, 21 gauge green needle. You can see the needle very nicely. We're only a centimetre or two in depth. So for superficial injections, I don't think it would be a problem at all. Obviously, when you do an injection, it's really important that you anchor the probe so it doesn't move. And obviously, because it is quite a big probe, for small injections like around the hand and the foot, I think it could be a little bit tricky. So I don't think I'll be carrying out guided injections with it, but certainly it was good enough to do those superficial injections, although obviously I did these on meat specimens, not on humans. I haven't done an injection with it on humans. Okay. In terms of any other tips, a colleague of mine, Jeff, has used a handheld machine off an iPad for a while, and the two things he suggested when I spoke to him, which are great ideas, is you are going to need some sort of stand, and what he uses is a stand that just clips onto the desk, so you can move it around, but it doesn't fall over, because these can be a little bit top heavy, although this one is an actual Clarius one, which has got quite a heavy bottom to it, but the cheaper ones potentially might fall over. And he also suggests an anti-glare protector, which I think is a really good idea, because certainly unless you're in a real dark room, you do get quite a bit of glare off the iPad or the Android tablet, whatever you're using. And just from a personal point of view, I much enjoyed scanning on an iPad rather than an iPhone. And I think we have to remember about how it sort of looks at face value to a client if they're paying a reasonable amount of money to come in for a scan. I think doing it off the phone just wouldn't really cut it for me. Obviously, if you're working in A&E or you're working in a hospital department, then yeah, you can just walk around with that. But it really does depend on the information that you're trying to gain from the scan. As a musculoskeletal sonographer and working in sports injuries, what we're looking at, those ligaments, the tendons, that internal structure, is so small, way less than a millimetre. So we need to make sure that we've got a really good image quality and we've got a nice screen to look at it, and preferably quite a big screen to look at it as well. So I think those things are important if you're going to buy one of these machines. Have a look on our website. As I say, we've got lots of resources on there. If you are thinking about buying a Clarius, then hopefully this is you found it quite useful. Am I thinking about buying a Clarius? Now, I didn't think I'd say this, but I do think that I potentially am going to buy one. And the reasons that I think I'm going to buy it is because I was trying to think about, it's not going to substitute any of my GE or sonocytes in my clinic. I'm not going to start scanning more on the Clarius. But what I would say is it is very portable. You know, if there was an area that I was trying to work on, or I was trying to work on a presentation for teaching, then I could just take the Clarius home. I don't need, you know, move around a large machine or anything like that. So, and also from a teaching point of view, the idea of the Clarius Live and the screen share, and also for traveling with these machines. You know, if you work in a sports team, and you're traveling from different ground to ground, then I think this can be really useful. Certainly if you worked in A&E or a hospital department, or even, and I know a lot of these machines are being used in the developing world, and increasing the accessibility of ultrasound and imaging in developing countries, which is absolutely brilliant. I'm sure it's going to make a massive difference in there, in those countries. But what I would say is it doesn't matter how small, how cool, how cheap, or how exciting these machines look. If it doesn't have the image quality, you shouldn't buy it. And what I would say is I think this Clarius, for the price, I think at the moment it probably is the best handheld machine out there on the market. Certainly what I've tried. I've had some experience of the Philips Lumify, and hopefully I'm going to do a head-to-head with the Clarius and the Philips Lumify in the coming weeks. If any of you are really interested, we do have a closed Facebook forum called Smug Ultrasound Forum. You just need to request to join, and every day there's lots of good scans being sent up. There's about 500 people on it now, so it's a really good forum to try and get some good peer support. And obviously these Clarius are great for that, because you can send images straight away from your Clarius dashboard without patient details on, etc. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to drop me an email. Other than that, I hope you found it useful, and I'll try and do some more product reviews. If you have a look on our resources page on the website, there are some other blogs there about what to look for in a machine and different comparisons between the different machines. And if you've got any questions, then just let us know. Thanks for listening.